Jason's Rolls-Royce glided silently down the winding, tree-lined street of the exclusive gated community, its polished black body gleaming under the early morning sun. This wasn't just any neighborhood. It was a sanctuary of manicured lawns, white picket fences, and perfectly trimmed hedges. Residents waved to neighbors as they strolled by, dogs on leashes wagging eagerly. But for Jason, the familiar calm felt like a fragile mask, one ready to crack. He pulled up to his new home, an elegant mansion with tall windows and ivy climbing the brick walls. Jason's heart quickened. After months of searching, this was it, the perfect place to start fresh. He reached for his keys, already picturing evenings on the terrace, the hum of the quiet suburbs soothing his restless mind. But before the door even opened, a sharp voice cut through the morning air. "That's not your car." Karen's words rang out, harsh and accusing. Jason turned to see Karen standing on the sidewalk, arms crossed tightly. She was the self-appointed queen of the HOA board, known for her rigid enforcement of community rules and a suspicious glare that could freeze anyone in their tracks. "This Rolls-Royce, where did you get it? It's reported stolen." Karen snapped, her eyes narrowing like a hawk spotting prey. Jason blinked, caught off guard. "I own it. It's my car." His voice was calm, but firm. Karen wasn't convinced. "I've got the police report right here." She waved a crumpled piece of paper like a weapon. "Someone filed a claim last week, saying it was taken without permission, and now you're parking it here, like it's nothing." Neighbors started to gather, curiosity piqued. Some whispered behind their hands, others just stared, waiting for the drama to unfold. Jason felt all eyes on him, the weight of suspicion suddenly heavier than the Rolls-Royce itself. "Are you trying to pull a fast one on us?" Karen pressed, stepping closer, "because this community doesn't take kindly to thieves." Jason swallowed hard, but held his ground. "You're wrong. I bought the car legally. You can check the registration. My name's on it." Karen's smirk didn't fade. "That doesn't mean anything. You could have forged the documents. It happens all the time." Jason clenched his jaw. It was clear Karen wasn't just concerned about a car. This was personal. Before he could respond, a sharp knock interrupted the tension. Jason glanced toward the street and saw a delivery driver nervously holding a package. The neighbor beside Karen whispered, "Maybe he's hiding more than just a car." Jason's mind raced. Why was Karen so intent on stirring trouble? And what did the police report really say? As he unlocked his front door, he realized this wasn't going to be the quiet new beginning he had hoped for. Someone wanted to challenge his place here, and the Rolls-Royce was only the beginning. The morning sun climbed higher, but the tension hanging over Jason's new home only deepened. Word of Karen's explosive accusation had already rippled through the community like wildfire, sparking whispers in every corner. As Jason unpacked inside, the quiet hum of the neighborhood felt anything but peaceful. Outside, a small crowd lingered, neighbors casting sideways glances, some exchanging hushed theories. Jason's phone buzzed repeatedly with messages and calls he ignored for now. He needed time to think. Why had Karen accused him so publicly? And why did so many seem willing to believe her? As afternoon turned to evening, Jason stepped out onto his porch, hoping to calm his nerves with fresh air. Instead, he caught sight of a figure lurking near the mailbox across the street. The shadow melted into the bushes when Jason's eyes locked on it, but the unease settled deeper in his gut. Later that night, another unsettling surprise awaited. His mailbox had been rifled through, important letters and packages scattered on the ground. Among them, a note scrawled hastily in dark ink, "Stay away before it's too late." Jason's pulse quickened. Someone was watching him, maybe even trying to intimidate him. But who? And why? The next day, Karen showed no signs of backing down. She posted a sharply worded letter on the HOA bulletin board, accusing Jason of being a threat to community safety and urging residents to report any suspicious activity. Her tone was more than just concerned neighbor, it was a warning. Neighbors began to choose sides. Some, swayed by Karen's relentless push, kept their distance or avoided Jason's gaze. Others whispered their doubts about her motives. Why is she so obsessed? A middle-aged woman named Linda asked Jason quietly at the local grocery store. "It feels like more than just about the car." Jason nodded slowly. "I'm starting to think so too." Late that evening, Jason reviewed the police report Karen claimed to have. The report described a stolen Rolls-Royce matching his car's details, filed by an anonymous complainant. But the more he read, the stranger it seemed. The dates didn't line up with when he bought the car, and the officer noted no proof had been found. Jason's mind raced. Someone had filed a false report. But who? And why use his car as bait? Determined to find answers, Jason decided to dive deeper. He began checking HOA records, looking for anything unusual. The documents were labyrinthine. Pages of fees, meeting minutes, and property deeds. But Jason's sharp eyes caught odd inconsistencies. Some ownership documents were missing. Fees had been charged mysteriously. That night, Jason stayed up late scanning the papers. The deeper he dug, the more the neighborhood's pristine image began to crack. Beneath the perfect lawns and polite smiles, secrets festered. And Karen, she wasn't just the HOA's enforcer. She was a watcher, a gatekeeper guarding something far bigger than anyone suspected. Jason leaned back in his chair, the note's warning echoing in his mind. This wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about power, control, and a truth someone desperately wanted to hide. The next morning, Jason woke with a restless energy pulsing through him. The unanswered questions about Karen's accusations and the strange police report gnawed at his mind like an itch he couldn't scratch. Today, he decided he would get to the bottom of it. He made his way to the HOA's small, cluttered office tucked behind the clubhouse. The receptionist barely glanced up as he entered, a chilly reminder that he was still an outsider here. Jason flashed his new homeowner ID badge and requested access to the community's official records. His request was met with polite but cautious silence. HOA files, he quickly realized, were no ordinary documents. They were tightly controlled. After a few tense minutes, an assistant led him to a cramped room stacked with filing cabinets and binders that smelled faintly of dust and forgotten secrets. Jason took a deep breath and started digging. The first binder was filled with recent meeting minutes and financial statements. Routine, mostly, until he noticed irregularities. Several entries detailed fees imposed on residents, but a few were inexplicably marked unpaid, despite evidence residents claimed to have settled them months ago. Curious, Jason jotted down the dates and names. Deeper in the archives, he found a series of land deeds, copies of original property titles, transfers, and easements. Most looked standard, but one document caught his eye. A nearly illegible deed from decades ago, bearing the signature of an ancestor Jason barely knew existed. It was a deed that transferred ownership of the entire block, not just his house, but every home, street, and common area, to a family trust with his surname. Jason's heart pounded. Could it be? Had he unknowingly inherited the whole neighborhood? He scanned the surrounding files for confirmation, but the trail grew colder. Many later documents showed the HOA as the controlling authority of the land, contradicting the old deed. Had the HOA erased or hidden this critical piece of history? His phone buzzed, snapping him from his thoughts. A text from an unknown number read, "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." Jason swallowed the growing knot in his stomach. Whoever sent this wanted him to back off, and fast. But he couldn't. Not now. Not after uncovering even a hint of such a massive secret. That night, under the dim light of his study, Jason pieced together the fragments. The HOA had been operating as the de facto authority for years, but legally, their claim was shaky at best. Somehow, the family trust deed had been buried, overwritten by bureaucracy, and perhaps by deliberate manipulation. His mind raced through the possibilities. If he truly owned the block, the HOA's rules, fees, and Karen's aggressive policing could all be illegitimate. But proving it, that would take more than dusty papers and anonymous threats. And Karen's role. She wasn't just a vigilant neighbor. She was a gatekeeper protecting the HOA's fragile grip on power. Jason realized her hostility wasn't random. It was strategic. As midnight approached, Jason leaned back, a mix of fear and excitement flooding him. The peaceful facade of the neighborhood was cracking wide open, and he was at the center of the storm. Tomorrow, Jason's mind raced as he stared at the faded deed, its brittle edges whispering secrets from decades past. If this document was authentic, and every sign pointed to that, then the entire narrative Karen and the HOA had spun was built on sand. Determined to confirm his suspicions, Jason decided to visit the county archives the following morning. Nestled in a gray, unassuming building downtown, the archive was a maze of old books, yellowed papers, and dust-covered records. Here, the truth was buried beneath layers of bureaucracy, waiting for someone willing enough to dig. Inside, Jason approached the clerk, an elderly woman with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. After explaining his purpose, she led him to a restricted section where original land deeds and property transfers were stored. Jason carefully pulled the deed from its place, tracing the faded signature of his ancestor with his finger. He then searched through the surrounding files, transfer records, tax documents, and legal disputes. One by one, the pieces started falling into place. Decades ago, the land had been transferred to the family trust, with clear legal rights attached. But over time, strange court filings and HOA minutes hinted at quiet battles behind the scenes. Lawsuits had been filed, quietly dismissed, and some documents appeared to have been amended or lost. Jason's stomach tightened when he found a series of letters between the HOA's previous president and a mysterious law firm. The letters hinted at a covert effort to maintain community stability by suppressing certain property claims. It was vague, but ominous. Back in the present, the puzzle became clearer. The HOA was operating with assumed authority, masking the fact that Jason's family, unaware until now, had the ultimate legal claim over the neighborhood. Jason felt a surge of both triumph and caution. This wasn't just a simple property dispute. It was a power struggle hidden in plain sight. But as he left the archives, a shadow trailed him outside. The same figure he'd seen near his mailbox days ago moved silently among the crowds. Jason quickened his pace, heart pounding. Whoever was watching him was growing bolder. That night, Jason's phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." But now, Jason's fear had turned into resolve. The truth was too important to bury. The following day, armed with photocopies of the deeds and letters, Jason returned home, ready to face Karen and the HOA. He wanted answers, and if possible, allies among his neighbors. But when he arrived, a surprise awaited him. Karen stood outside, flanked by two other board members, their expressions unreadable. "You shouldn't have come here alone," Karen said coldly, her eyes locking with his. "Some truths are better left buried." Jason met her gaze without flinching. "The community deserves to know what's really going on." Karen smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. "This isn't just about the HOA's rules. This is about control, and you're about to learn what happens when you challenge it." Jason's blood ran cold, but he didn't back down. The quiet neighborhood was about to erupt, and he was ready to ignite the spark. The HOA meeting room was packed to the brim, an electric tension crackling through the air. Residents whispered nervously, eyes darting between Jason and Karen, who sat on opposite sides of the long conference table. Tonight wasn't just any HOA meeting. It was a showdown that would change everything. Jason cleared his throat, heart pounding but voice steady. "I'm here to show you all something important," he began, pulling out a thick stack of documents. "These are the original deeds proving that I, and my family, own the entire block." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Karen's confident smirk faltered, replaced by a tight, guarded expression. "I know many of you have trusted the HOA board," Jason continued, "but what I've uncovered is a cover-up. The HOA's claims to the land are invalid. This community isn't theirs to govern." Karen jumped up, her voice sharp and shrill. "This is nonsense. You can't just waltz in here with some old papers and expect us to hand over control." Jason met her glare without flinching. "These documents are official. They've been buried and ignored, but they're real." He walked across the room, spreading the papers on the table for everyone to see. Residents leaned forward, eyes widening as they absorbed the evidence: legal deeds, court filings, letters exposing attempts to suppress the truth. Karen slammed her hand on the table. "You're trying to tear apart this community. Without the HOA, there'd be chaos." A respected elderly neighbor, Mr. Thompson, stood slowly. Chaos or freedom? Maybe it's time we questioned who's really been in charge. The room erupted in murmurs, a mix of shock and excitement. Jason seized the moment. This isn't about tearing down the neighborhood. It's about restoring rights to the homeowners, the real owners. We deserve transparency, fairness, and respect. Karen's face hardened. "You think this will be easy? You're wrong." Suddenly, she reached into her bag and slammed a thick folder on the table. "I've done my homework too. I found inconsistencies in your claims, legal loopholes, forged signatures. Your documents aren't as solid as you think." Jason grabbed the folder and scanned its contents. Some pages showed discrepancies, but many were clearly doctored. He pointed this out calmly. "Looks like someone's been busy covering their tracks." Karen's facade cracked for a moment. Then she sneered. "You want a fight? You've got one." The room's energy shifted. What had been a civil meeting now felt like the front line of a battle. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. Gasps and murmurs filled the silence. Jason's voice cut through the dark. "This community deserves the truth. Not threats, not secrets." Minutes later, the power returned, but the atmosphere had changed. Neighbors exchanged glances, doubt settling in. Karen, caught off guard, looked around nervously. Her authority was unraveling. Jason knew this was just the beginning. The HOA's grip was slipping, and the community was waking up. But beneath it all, Jason wondered, how far would Karen go to keep control? And what dark secrets were still hidden beneath the neighborhood's perfect surface? The storm unleashed at the HOA meeting rippled far beyond the conference room walls. Jason knew he had shaken the neighborhood's foundation, but he also understood the fight was far from over. The very next morning, the quiet streets buzzed with an undercurrent of unease. Neighbors whispered in hushed tones, some avoiding Jason's gaze altogether, while others cast cautious glances of support. The community was divided, fractured by suspicion and uncertainty. Karen was relentless. She launched a personal campaign to discredit Jason, digging into his past with the precision of a seasoned investigator. She scored public records, questioned former associates, and circulated rumors designed to sow doubt about his character. Is he really the man he claims to be? She demanded during an emergency HOA newsletter, a thinly veiled call for residents to reject Jason's claims. Jason felt the pressure mounting. But what struck him hardest was the subtle but unmistakable shift in the neighborhood atmosphere. Late-night noises disturbed his sleep. His Rolls-Royce was vandalized, its sleek paint scratched with ominous symbols. A shattered side mirror lay on the driveway one morning, a clear warning. Yet, Jason refused to back down. He hired a trusted lawyer and began documenting every incident, preparing for a legal battle that promised to drag on. But he also knew that winning on paper wasn't enough. He had to win the hearts and minds of his neighbors. One evening, as he walked his dog past the cul-de-sac, a group of residents gathered quietly, exchanging concerned looks. Among them was Linda, the friendly woman who had questioned Karen's motives earlier. "I'm tired of the secrets," she said softly, meeting Jason's eyes. "Karen's been controlling this place for too long. Maybe it's time for a change." Jason nodded, grateful for the support. "It's not just about me. It's about all of us. This community deserves honesty." As days passed, anonymous threats escalated. A chilling note pinned to his front door read, "Stop now, or face the consequences." Surveillance cameras around his property were mysteriously disabled overnight. Jason's every move felt shadowed by unseen watchers. The battle lines were clear. Karen wielded the HOA like a weapon, rallying loyalists to resist Jason's claims and maintain control. Jason fought back with evidence, persistence, and a growing network of allies. The community teetered on the edge, caught between loyalty to the familiar and the promise of a new beginning. One night, Jason's phone buzzed with an encrypted message. "Meet me at the old community center. I have information that can help." Curiosity and caution warred within him. Was this a trap or a lifeline? Jason knew one thing for certain. The fight for the neighborhood's future was far from over, and the truth was more dangerous than he had ever imagined. Jason stood in the shadowed parking lot of the old community center, the night air thick with tension and the distant hum of crickets. The building, long abandoned and forgotten by most, was an unlikely place for a breakthrough. Yet, the encrypted message had pulled him here, a mysterious invitation promising answers in the middle of the ongoing storm. He scanned the dimly lit entrance, every muscle tense and ready for a trap. The neighborhood had taught him that danger often wore a friendly face, and trust was a rare commodity. But Jason was determined to see this through. A figure stepped out from the darkness, a woman, mid-30s, with sharp eyes that seemed to hold secrets of their own. "Jason," she asked quietly. He nodded. "Who are you?" "My name's Claire," she said, glancing around nervously. "I've lived here for years, but I've been watching the HOA's games from the sidelines. Karen's control, it's deeper and darker than you realize." Jason's curiosity piqued. "How so?" Claire pulled a worn folder from her bag, revealing a cache of documents, emails, photos, and recordings she'd collected secretly over the past year. "The HOA's been involved in more than just land disputes," Claire whispered. "There are financial irregularities, secret backroom deals, even intimidation tactics we didn't know about. Karen's been running this place like a fortress, keeping neighbors divided and scared." Jason flipped through the evidence, heart pounding with the confirmation he'd hoped for. "But why now?" he asked. "Why come forward?" Claire's eyes flickered with urgency. "Because things are escalating. Karen's planning something big, a vote to seize full legal ownership under a new clause buried in the HOA bylaws. If that passes, no one can challenge her authority." Jason clenched his fists. "We have to stop it." "Exactly," Claire said. "But we can't do it alone. We need to unite the community and expose everything, the lies, the threats, the stolen power." As they spoke, a sudden noise shattered the quiet, footsteps echoing nearby. Both froze. "It's them," Claire hissed. "We need to move. Now." They slipped out through a back exit, hearts racing as the night seemed to close in around them. Back at his home, Jason felt a renewed sense of purpose. The stakes were higher than ever, but with Claire's help and the growing support of neighbors like Linda and Mr. Thompson, he might just have a chance. Karen's empire was formidable, but Jason was no longer fighting alone. The clock was ticking, and the community's future hung in the balance. Would they rise together to reclaim their neighborhood, or watch everything slip away under Karen's iron grip? The day of the emergency HOA vote arrived. The entire neighborhood buzzed with tension. Folding chairs lined the community park as residents gathered beneath a hastily erected white tent. At the front sat Karen, perched like a queen on a plastic throne, flanked by her loyal board members. The podium before her bore the HOA's seal, a symbol of order, power, and control. Jason arrived with Claire and a small group of supportive neighbors, documents tucked securely in a leather folder. They weren't here just to vote. They were here to end this. Karen tapped the mic. "Today's vote will determine the future of our community. As acting president, I propose the addition of Clause 57B, the formal transfer of community governance to the HOA board indefinitely, securing stability and order." Murmurs of confusion spread. The clause was buried in legal jargon and delivered at the last minute, a dirty tactic meant to confuse and rush the vote. Jason stepped forward. "Before anyone votes, the community deserves to know the truth," he said, raising his voice over the mounting noise. "This isn't about order, it's about control, and Karen has been manipulating this neighborhood from the shadows." Karen scoffed. "He's a liar, a manipulator who wants to dismantle everything we've built." Jason laid the original deed on the podium. "I own this block, all of it. This document, signed and recorded decades ago, proves it. My family's trust never relinquished ownership. The HOA's authority was never legally valid. Gasps swept the crowd. The board members exchanged panicked glances. And there's more, Claire said, stepping forward. Emails, financial fraud, illegal surveillance of residents. Karen has gone to great lengths to keep this buried. Karen's face twisted with rage. This is a stunt, a con job. That deed is ancient and meaningless. Jason pulled out a notarized letter from the county clerk's office, confirming the deed's legitimacy and the oversight that had hidden it for years. Legally binding. Recognized. You've been trespassing, Karen. Not just on my property, but on every home here. Suddenly, Mr. Thompson stood and faced the crowd. I vote no confidence in the current HOA board. Dozens of hands shot up. Agreed. Seconded. Disband the board. Karen backed away from the podium as her empire crumbled. One board member quietly slipped away, and another stared at the ground in shame. Police arrived moments later, not to arrest Jason, as they had before, but to take statements. Karen, red-faced and sputtering, was escorted away under suspicion of fraud and property tampering. The neighborhood was silent. Jason turned to the crowd. I'm not here to rule. I just want to rebuild this community together. No more fear. No more control. Cheers erupted, and neighbors swarmed in with gratitude and relief. Weeks later, a new council was formed, transparent, resident-run, and accountable. That HOA, as it had been, no longer existed. And Jason, he returned to peaceful mornings in his Rolls-Royce, waving to neighbors who now saw him not as an outsider, but as the man who gave their neighborhood back.